So it's JJ Humphrey. We're back on Elephant in the Room today. Got Bobby Cleveland with us remote from the big city of Dallas. Bob down there visiting family and friends. And we have a very special guest. Eve is a very, very good friend of me and Bob's. And she happens to be the attorney for OCP and the attorney we call all the time and pester every time I got a legal question. She's our go-to legal expert. And so Eve is with us today to talk about something that we actually, me and Bob had a lot of, involvement in and actually got her involved in. And that's OCP, which is Oklahoma Correctional Professionals. She started representing OCP and now has just learned all kinds of things going on in our state government, going on with Merrit Protection. What happened in Merrit Protection, and it was turned into what we call civil service. And so Eve's going to enlighten us today what that process, why we changed or how we changed and what the change was. But what's going on, I don't think only with DOC, but I think DOC is some of the worst players in the state. So Eve, explain to us what, where we went from Merrit and now it's called civil service. Explain what that did to us, what's happening, and what you're doing in that.
Well, thanks for having me on, JJ. So you guys can probably talk about the Merrit system a little bit more than me because I came on board once it moved over. But what the state legislators did a few years back is they decided to create the OMES, which is the, help me out, Oklahoma Management Employee Services, something like that. I can't remember.
Oklahoma Management Enterprise Services or something like that.
And
I call it OMES. It's a mess.
Hey, Eve, real quick. We're only getting half of you sometimes. Would you move over a little bit where you get more in the picture? Yeah, that's good.
All right. So the state legislators created legislation that created the OMES, which was a new division within the state. And they tasked them with managing state employees. And so pretty much all agencies went under the umbrella of OMES, to my knowledge. And within that, they created the Civil Service Division, or the CSD. Civil Service Division has basically created a special court system, if you will, that involves mediation and then administrative law judges. So it's an administrative court. And the purpose with creating it was to give state employees a fast and consistent and reasonable way to air out their grievances, to get them resolved, and to handle it in an expedient manner. That's what's on state statute. That's what everyone says. That's what all state legislation, all statutes, all information says is the purpose of it. But it's a very short, truncated process. So when an employee is disciplined in some way and they are a state agent, they're a state employee, they have 10 days that they can file an appeal. And then when they file an appeal, they go to mediation. And then after mediation, if they can't come to an agreement, then they have the right to a hearing. And the hearing is basically like a mini trial. Here's the problem. The problem is, while there were probably good intentions with the creation of um, these divisions, it's hard to encompass, or it's hard to think about everything that's going to come up, and they have not been updated or revised to really operate in the real world where it needs to be. And I'll give you some examples. By state statute, everything has to be done within 30 days. Now, obviously, I deal a lot with Department of Corrections because I represent OCP, so I represent employees of the Department of Correction when they've had a discipline issue that they want to appeal, like termination. The statutes have limitations on what you're allowed. So it's like a mini trial, but you don't get the same benefits as you do if you go to court. So there's no discovery. There's no ability to call witnesses. By state statute, the only thing you're allowed as evidence is your discipline file. Well, that sounds okay, but let's talk about that. Department of Corrections controls your discipline file. I'm going to use them as an example. Other state agencies probably do things a little differently. Department of Corrections controls what goes into your discipline file. I've had employees in court in these hearings that they've written reports. They have fellow employees that have written reports on an incident that were favorable to them. Guess what wasn't in their discipline file? Those reports. Department of Corrections is not mandated to put everything in the discipline file that's filed. So they control what goes in there. That means they control the narrative. You don't get to bring your, you can talk about it, but you don't get to bring evidence of positive things, of witnesses that were, witnessed whatever incident it was. You're limited to 3 witnesses or 3 people that can testify. HR, a supervisor, and the employee. That means if somebody witnessed it, by statute, you're not allowed to. Now you can file something and fight for the right to, and sometimes judges allow it. There's some vague language, but it's really restrictive. And what I have found is Department of Corrections will pretty much do anything they can to delay and hinder. I'll give you another example. There's language in the administrative code. That's the code, that's the statute language that was written by our elected officials when they created all of this. And it talks about subpoenas. But you can't subpoena somebody when you're in a 30-day window or less. You don't have access to employee information. You don't know where they live. You don't know where they work. If you send it through mail, if they're the night shift, they're never going to be able to go to the post office and sign. Sometimes they have to sign. There's a whole slew of issues that factor into this that really don't give the employees a fair, they don't give them a fair opportunity right from the get-go. And I'm just talking about the first 30 days. There's a whole slew of other things we can talk about. And if y'all want to get into them, I'm happy to. But it's just another example of a state agency doing everything they can to protect the state agency, even though they're telling the public they're doing it to protect the state employees.
Well, here's the deal. What's funny, I voted. Bob, you'll remember this because this was a big fight. Me and Bob were both. Oh, I got the police coming around here. I'm scared. I'm going to lock the door. But anyways, me and Bob were in this fight originally. I was fighting as a legislator. He was fighting as OCP president to keep Merrit Protection. Because Merrit Protection had problems. One of the problems, they didn't have enough employees. They were behind because they didn't give them enough money and they only had 1 or 2 employees. And so naturally, they had a whole bunch of cases backlogged. So instead of fixing that problem, they said, we want to change the whole process. Merrit Protection was good. It had good rules. It had a good structure, and there's a reason we had it. We fought to keep Merrit Protection, and they came to me and basically through Bob and said, yeah, well, if JJ will vote for that, then we'll let y'all have a place on there to set all of these. So we're going to get to go to the meetings. We're going to get to have some control over how civil service was set up, and we're going to have a lot of input in how that's going to happen. Hey, we had our lawyers over there. We were Bob went over there. I didn't get to go over there, but Bob went over there. Bob can testify. They didn't give Bob. You didn't even get to put any input in there, did you? Our attorney.
No, no. Bottom line is that whole program is designed to protect Department of Corrections. It's not to protect employees. In no way, shape, or form is it to protect employees. It's all one-sided. It's very unfair. Was that being fair assessment, Eve?
So yes, and let me say something for the record. My complaints are with how the legislation was written. So my complaints are with the way the statutes are written and the way some of the state agencies run, specifically Department of Corrections. I think OMES, my encounters with them, with Civil Service Division, the administrative law judges, I think they do a great job. But they are still required to operate within the constrictions that the the legislators put in place when they wrote the legislation. And so those are some of the issues. Now, here's where,
in fact, for me, if we didn't have good judges, this state would be a bigger disaster than what it is. But you do have some good judges, it looks like to me. So
judges have been great. And here's where I mean, it would be a joke if we didn't have legitimate good judges in there. But we have, especially with OCP, we have multiple employees that go to they file their appeal, they go to mediation, they go to a hearing. We put on a little mini trial is what it is, and we win an administrative court. And so we have multiple employees that were terminated. The administrative law judge said, yes, the employee has proven that Department of Corrections did not have a reasonable basis for the termination. Many times they skip progressive discipline steps. That's another requirement. That's other statute and law and policies that are in place. And the judge will order that the employee be reinstated with back pay and benefits. They'll order that the termination will be removed from their discipline file. Sometimes they will order attorney fees, sometimes they won't. But what we're having is we're having Department of Corrections, basically they're fighting everything. So I have multiple cases where the employee is 800 plus days out from where a judge said, Department of Corrections, give them their job back and give them back pay and benefits for the time that we've been going through this process. 800 something days. Imagine if you were that person and you lost all source of income, what happens? These people have lost not only their jobs and their source of income, but they lose their cars. They have cars repossessed. They lose their homes. They end up having to move. Often you get pettiness involved. And so the local people that they worked with start blackballing them in the community because they're fighting for their right to be reinstated. And so they can't find a job in that smaller community. It's a real problem. So what happens after we win with the administrative law judge in the Civil Service Division Court is usually Department of Corrections will file an appeal right there with the Civil Service Division. They'll say, we think you were wrong. And another judge will review it and see if there was any errors of law, if there was anything legally done wrong by the administrative judge. When they lose that, then they will then turn around and file for a judicial review with the district court in Oklahoma County.
Well, Eve, just so we're clear, like so our listeners are understanding, when we say 800 days, there's 365 days in 1 year. So you're talking about more than 2 years to get these resolved while these employees are no income.
That's right. Now, I mean, clearly most people are trying to get a job where they can because they recognize Department of Corrections is not going to abide by judicial order. And let's be clear about this. There is a judge that has ordered a state agency to do something. And that state agency is saying, no, judge, we're not going to abide by your order. And they are clogging our judicial system down with these ridiculous filings. I'll give you another example. I have one. She's not an OCP member, but she was a former Department of Corrections employee. She's 850 something days out. They they the employee won in the district or in the civil service court. Department of Corrections appealed. Then they filed in district court. Before they filed, well, the reason they filed in civil service division court when they were having that little mini trial, the recording wasn't working right. The judge asked both attorneys, attorney for DOC and the attorney for the employee, the recording's not working right. Do you want to proceed? And they both said yes. Guess what Department of Corrections complained about and said they were harmed in some way in district court? They complained that there wasn't a recording of the hearing. The very thing that their attorneys agreed to proceed with, not knowing if it was recording or not. So that got kicked back because there wasn't a hearing. Got kicked back on that and some documentation that was excluded. We had a second hearing in Civil Service Division Court. We won it again. They attempted appeal. They have filed back in district court again. I mean, if that doesn't tell you they're just playing games, I don't know what does.
Well, let me ask you a question, Eve. Now, here's one of the things that we've contended is that DOC's going outside. So they have a general counsel. So they have a division in the Department of Corrections that pays for lawyers that are hired by the Department of Corrections called general counsel. They do not use their general counsel. Instead, they hire outside law firms to handle these cases. And those outside law firms make a lot of money. So when we're seeing these cases appealed and appealed and appealed and appealed, then am I not correct in saying that these attorneys are making bank by appealing these cases? And it's not DOC's money, it's the taxpayers' money that is being spent. And when they finally lose, we're going to have to pay back that 850 days. Or correct me if I'm wrong. We don't know, we don't know yet what we're going to have to pay back. Correct?
That's a whole other issue, and we can get to that in a second. It is a problem. So Department of Corrections, their general counsel, usually there's a couple of attorneys that will come to Civil Service Division Court, and they will represent DOC at that level. When it gets to the judicial review that they file in district court, state agencies are allowed to retain outside counsel. They have to go through the Attorney General's office and get permission, and they have to sign a contract. It's called the 20I. That's the statute that it represents. And it outlines what, there's a list of state agencies or there's a list of attorney firms that have said, we'd like to do business with the state. They can pick from that, or they have to get permission. And so Department of Corrections has entered into a contract with McAfee and Taft, big law firm downtown right next to the Oklahoma County Courthouse. And they have a 20I contract. Now, there have been issues even with that, but that discloses, you can look it up. It's public knowledge. It tells you what attorneys are designated to work.
But let me ask you a question. I mean, I could understand that if we were having a case, say, on a medical issue, somebody had a heart attack and you wanted somebody who specialized in medical, or some major multi-million-dollar lawsuit where we needed an expert in, say, federal law or something like that, that the Department of Corrections, but these are simple termination hearings. They're hiring an outside firm. In fact, help me if I'm wrong. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but my understanding is when they file an appeal, you're not even going to court on the actual case. What you're going to court on, was there anything done wrong in the prior court? You're looking at, did y'all follow the rules? Did you record? Did you do everything that they're supposed to do? So again, why is DOC spending massive, massive money on every one of these cases to just appeal and drag it out? I mean, that looks almost criminal to me. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's ridiculous is what it is. It's really, to me, it's thumbing the nose at the entire judicial system. Because when you have a judge that tells you to do something and you say, no, I'm not going to do it, I mean, somebody else does that. If I do that, or if JJ or Bobby does that, Mr. Lawman's knocking on our door pretty quickly.
Had we had some gone to the Supreme Court?
I'm sorry.
Have we had any cases that have gone to the Supreme Court?
I personally have 3 at the Supreme Court or the Court of Civil Appeals right now. I fully expect, and so far everything I've encountered, and I have about, I don't know, 9 cases. There's for sure 13 or so that I know of just off the top of my head that are the almost identical scenario with Department of Corrections. And if they lose at district court, they file an appeal with the Supreme Court, the Court of Civil Appeals. Now, going back to the outside legal counsel, I mentioned that 20I. You know, if a person wants to see what Department of Corrections or any state agency is spending outside of what their internal budget is for their own general counsel, the Attorney General for the state of Oklahoma is required every February to put out a report, and it goes to the elected officials and the governor. And here's the irony on this. So last year, I discovered that Department of Corrections did not renew or sign a new contract, a new 20I with McAfee and Taft. However, McAfee and Taft continued to represent them in court. So we had a big law firm downtown and a state agency operating outside the scope of a contract, which is required by statute. So I didn't flood the court system with a filing on every single one of my cases. I picked 2, and I filed to alert the court system that McAfee and Taft was representing Department of Corrections without a contract in place. Well, when Department of Corrections first engaged McAfee and Taft and they filled out a 20I contract, they filled it out for very specific cases that were already ongoing. I inherited a few of them from someone who represented before me. Maybe all of those cases are at the Supreme Court now, but they listed 3, maybe 4 cases, and they said that's what they were retaining McAfee and Taft for. But then what happened is, as we continued to win in the lower court system, they continued to decide to fight them. And so they started giving those to McAfee and Taft also, in addition to the ones specifically referenced in that initial contract. Well, once I pointed out that they were operating without a contract and they decided to go ahead and renew it at that point, they changed the language to say it's open for everything. Now, I don't know if legally they can. I have reached out to another state agency, and I've talked to someone in a high position of authority about that. And it's my understanding that you have to be very specific about what you engage outside counsel with. And a state agency is not allowed to just have a blanket legal firm representation when they have in-house counsel. I haven't fought that yet just because I've been tied up with other things, but it's a big issue. Now, that battle was going on last year, and guess coincidentally, what was not in the 2026 report from the Attorney General? There was nothing listed from the Department of Corrections showing that they hired McAfee and Taft, that they paid McAfee and Taft, or that they had any outside counsel payments made for the year of 2025. Maybe.
Well, let me ask you a question. If they don't have contracts, then they should be off those cases. Correct?
Well, so they got it fixed. They signed a new contract. They signed a new contract with blanket language allowing them to supposedly represent Department of Corrections for anything that Department of Corrections wanted to appeal. But the people of Oklahoma have no idea what Department of Corrections paid in 2025 because that was somehow inadvertently left off of the Attorney General's report that he gave to the governor and the legislators in February.
Director Harp used to brag about how he's in with the Attorney General. He's got him tied up, and so it looks like to me this is something the Attorney General has been a part of and needs to have something done. He's running for office now. Maybe we need to bring that up. But I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, I thought we asked that question, JJ.
We have. I've requested 100 times to get an answer on what are they paying, what's the contracts, and again, I've not been able to find out. We actually, the attorney before Eve had requested some of that information, and I got into it with them, and they ended up getting mad. Sent that attorney the information, wouldn't send it to me, but sent it to the attorney. We ended up getting it because they were like, "I sent it to your attorney." I was like, that attorney ain't working for me. I asked for myself. We're no year in together. I'm like, golly, that's funny. But now let me ask you a question, Eve. This is how my brain thinks. This is the way I think. Let's say that I'm the director or over a state agency, and I really like you. You're a good friend of mine. I mean, we're like double tight. Um, is it possible that I just feed you a bunch of cases like this that you know you ain't gonna win? I mean, there ain't what's the purpose of you even taking these cases? I mean, they may have a case every once in a while on appeal that you're going to win, but most of these appeals, everything was done correctly. Most of the time, generally, they're just trying to throw something into a cog into the wheel. You know what I mean? And griping about nothing. So they're spending a lot of money with these attorney firms to get absolutely very little results back. I mean, almost nothing result back. And yet these attorney firms are making bank off of this. It smacks of like either favoritism towards contracts. Knowing the last director, I mean, we've caught the last director on two different embezzlement issues. It would not surprise me that he might even have a little, gig with them, say, hey, I'll throw you some business, you kick me back some money. Now we don't know that. I'm not saying that happened, but would not this deserve an investigation? I mean, this looks fairly the possibility of criminal, if not just negligent. I mean, it looks grossly negligent at minimal, but it looks possibly criminal if an investigation was conducted. Am I wrong on that assumption?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I would go as far as criminal, but I'm an attorney, so I choose
Sure.
my words a little more carefully. I think there is a whole lot of things that don't add up, and at minimum are weirdly coincidental, and beyond that are probably more indicative of a pattern of issue. I mean, the fact that they operated without a contract. Then, when I brought it up, they signed a contract. I submitted open records. I had to go through the AG's office to even get those. I had to issue a complaint because they wouldn't comply with the open records request. I asked for their billing records. I understand from an attorney standpoint, there are some confidential things, but what I got is I got an invoice from McAfee and Taft that said McAfee and Taft to Department of Corrections, and the rest of the page was black, where they had redacted everything, including even the amounts. Or
Well, you know what? As an investigator, so you're an attorney, so you're more cautious about what you say. As an investigator, one of the things I do is I look for patterns, and when you see patterns, so if you have one case where they just hey, we don't want to lose this, we're going to get somebody big time to try to win that case, okay. But where you have case after case after case that are minimal cases, these are terminations. These are not like, big time cases. And you're going out and you're hiring big time lawyers and you're losing, and the big time lawyers are losing, then again, that seems to be a pattern. Now, when you have a pattern and then they don't want to give you information, and all of this is public record, all of this is public money, and they should give you the public records. In fact, it's kind of a law violation for them not to give you the public records. Not kind of, it really is a law violation. And so when they decide to break the law to prevent you from seeing what they do, That's where the red flags, everything that I'm saying, when you see patterns, of abuse for nothing cases, when you see patterns of abuse of them covering up public information, willing to break the law to cover their tracks, that's when I say, hold on, what the Humphrey is going on right here? And that's what I'm saying, is that I believe we should be looking into this, because it again, I understand your reluctance because there's no evidence to show criminal behavior, but I will tell you there's enough evidence to say it would warrant an investigation. Would you agree with that?
I would. And, I mean, we're talking about this. You're right. It's public information. I find it highly suspect that another state agency, the Attorney General's office, the report on all of the information that I questioned all throughout the year of 2025. I know you did as well. That's the year that mysteriously Department of Corrections is not even listed. Now, I know for a fact they have a 20I contract because I've got a copy of it. They filed a copy in court on 2 of my cases to try to prove that I was wrong. They just conveniently skipped over the fact that they were operating without a contract for a whole year. But I think when you bring these issues up, there's all of these slew of issues, and then you've got another state agency. I mean, man, if they made a mistake and they just ignored it, that's just really suspect when there's been so much controversy around them. But that is the people's right to know. And we don't even, if we go and look at the report, they don't even show up as having paid anything out. And they paid substantial amounts of money out in 2025.
Eve, what if, for example, that you're fired, you've been there 25 years, maybe 30 years, and you're fired, but yet you have medical, you have money paid in for retirement. What do we do about that?
Well, that's a problem I'm actually in the middle of dealing with right now because, we started out talking about, I said, I think the legislation probably had good intentions. I mean, maybe I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but probably had some good intentions on this creation of the OMES Civil Service Division, writing the administrative code. But it wasn't thought through. So let me tell you what is in statute. The statute language is the administrative judge can award back pay and benefits. There is another little sentence that says the administrative law judge may consider any employment income that the employee had during the process. So let me give you an example. Let's say the employee made $50,000 working for Department of Corrections. They got a job at Walmart and they made $10,000 while they were fighting it. The administrative law judge can say, okay, Department of Corrections, y'all owe them $50,000 every year. Maybe they'll take the $10,000 out because they got money in their pocket. Here's the problem. When you just have language that says back pay and benefits, what does that mean? Because let me tell you what I think it means. I think it means health benefits. I think it means what they paid for into their retirement. State employees become state employees because of the benefits. They get money paid in. They gain time. They gain sick time. They gain personal days. They gain hours that go toward their retirement. So when they reach 20 years, the amount of retirement pay that they get when they retire is substantially more than if they worked 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. It's a scaled, and I'm not even getting into all of it. So
well, they should be made whole. Here's the deal, way I look at it. I mean, it's pretty simple. You're made whole. They fired you wrongly. What would you have if you had never left and figured out this is what they owe you? I mean, they fired you wrongfully. They have to rehire you. They had to reinstate you. They had to make you whole again. And that should, and I'll tell you, when you get in that retirement issue, that is that's a head scratcher, because trying to go back and get you to where, if you're 2 years off of that thing, what to pay to gain those 2 years back and make sure that you draw the same retirement as you would as if you had been in there is not a simple task. That's a pretty complex little issue, because even if they furlough you one day, I mean, when we get into furloughing employees, furloughing 1 day, 2 days a month, guess what? Will mess up your retirement big time. And so again, these are big issues that have to be discussed and should have been discussed. And I agree with you. The legislator, I don't think anybody, Mike Osborne was the main one that they had carrying this. Mike actually, sometimes Mike thinks he knows more than what Mike thinks and thinks everybody else don't know. But I was very involved with Merrit Protection, and Mike sat on the board of Merrit Protection and thought he knew. But what Mike didn't see was is what Merrit Protection did to prevent a bunch of stuff from getting there or that never made it. So he thought he had a good understanding when I don't think Mike really had that good of understanding.
I don't think he knew what he was doing.
I agree, Bob. He didn't have that. I'm trying to be kind to him because I like him, but I think he just thought he knew more than what he knows. And I think his intentions were good. I think Mike's a pretty decent guy, and I think his intentions were good. But again, they just did a very, very poor job. And I will tell you this, I think Mike was being driven by the governor and by Harp. And I can promise you their intentions were no good. What they intended to do, and I just think this is what civil service was set up, is to fire anybody they wanted to, fire when they wanted to, however they wanted to. No reason needed. We can fire who we want. We can hire who we want. Ain't nobody going to tell us what we're going to do. Now, that's their attitude. That's Harp's attitude, and that's who was driving this train for Stitt, but Stitt's responsible as well. And so, again, if you want to see a great example of that, when Harp went to DOC as the head of DOC, guess what he did? He fired everybody. He fired administrators without cause, without reason. Walk in there, fire them, and then go hire somebody that's absolutely no experience, that absolutely has nothing to offer except for one fact: they were his good buddies, his good friends. So basically, we had Merrit Protection to ensure that we don't have favoritism, nepotism, all those isms. And guess what? That's what you saw the minute that Merrit was gone, and the minute Harp stepped into that Department of Corrections. Guess what? He hired all his friends and fired
But we never ever had this going on what he's done to us. Now, I personally think his whole objection is his ideals for OCP is to get rid of them. He told me he did not like someone working over his shoulder. He's not going to listen to me. I'm not going to do anything you say. I got the AG in my pocket, and I'm friends of the governor. Well, that's pretty much the way he ran the show. He didn't. They said they couldn't fire people. That was the whole reason. We just can't fire anybody. Well, that's not true. There's a policy in there that says what you do. If you do something wrong, you talk to them. If they do it again, you give them a write-up. They do it again, you give them days off. Do it again, you're fired. It's
called progressive discipline.
It was there, but they don't follow progressive discipline at all. And it's just all about trying to get rid of OCP, and by following these cases, even though we're wrong, and we know we're wrong on this basically, but they're wrong, and they want us to pay out the money. We didn't have this problem before.
They know they're going to have to pay. What Bobby's saying, they know they're wrong. They know they're going to have to pay the money out. They go hire high dollar lawyers on a case that's a fairly simple case that they know they're going to lose. They're paying out massive money. They're dragging these things out that are going to end up costing them more money. I mean, tell us why would they do that? I mean, that's why I'm saying I think we need an investigation, because it makes absolutely no sense. Why would a department, and if we had one case where they're just mad at somebody, I get that, some high profile person they're just extremely mad at, they're going to make their life miserable, and they're going to drag this thing on as far as they can drag it. Okay, but that's not the case. That's every case we've got. I mean, even on stupid firing stuff that they know they're going to lose, they're dragging it out. Can you tell us what your thoughts are on why they would do that? That just seems
either that seems negligent, grossly stupid, which I do accuse them. I've never been accused of them being smart. They are grossly stupid, but it almost seems criminal. That's where I keep coming back. There seems something more nefarious about what's going on. It just doesn't seem anybody would do these things unless there's something going on.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think best case scenario, they're playing the averages. If you contest everything, you're going to have employees who aren't members of OCP, who don't know an attorney, who don't reach out for an attorney, who represent themselves. Not trying to toot my own horn, but I think there's certain situations when you have an attorney, things just go better than when you try to represent yourself. I think if they fight things enough, every once in a while, something's going to go their way. Unfortunately, I've had one that they took we won civil service division. We won the appeal. We went to district court. They kicked it back for some reason, some argument that they made. And the judge was like, okay, maybe I could see that. And then they lost the second go around because something changed. And so I think they're doing everything they can to avoid that. I think it's a mentality, and people aren't going to like to hear this, but I think Department of Corrections is a division of the law enforcement, and I think they don't like to be told what to do. I mean, clearly they're not doing what they're told to do because they're not abiding by the judicial orders. They've got a judge who said you have to do this. They're not doing it. So I don't think they like being told what to do. I don't think they like people. I don't think they like either one of you or me because we're not bowing down to them. We're calling out their mishaps. We're calling out the things they're doing. We're shedding light on it. That's a problem. So I think there's probably the fact that you guys and me are involved maybe as part of it as well. I mean, that's petty. But again, you said it doesn't make sense. So
you know what I think?
What?
I think we should change their name. I filed that. I think they are the Department of Corruption. I think they're corruption, but I think they love Bob more than me. I think I can say they love Bob more than me. They hate my guts. They hate my guts and livers, and I'm sure they're not liking you too well, Eve.
Well,
that should have nothing to do with the employee. It should have absolutely nothing to do with that employee. They want to terminate by not following any policies, and they're going to take it out on a person that worked for them for 20 years and fire him.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm starting to see is I've been seeing more and more of them just taking completely unrelated events. So progressive discipline. You say that to an average person. I'm a parent. If I'm going to progressively discipline my child, the first time they steal a cookie, I'm going to say, don't steal the cookie. The second time, I'm going to say, you stole a cookie, there's going to be a consequence to it. Then the third time they do it, there's going to be a consequence. To me, that's progressive discipline. They're doing things like a person, I don't know, cussed in front of a coworker. And so they're saying, hey, we're concerned about that. And then they forgot a piece of equipment, or they didn't sign a report or something completely unrelated. And they're saying, well, that's two incidents. We're putting both of them on this letter and we're terminating you.
Well, and the other problem is with that, there's, like you say, there's no consistency. There is no progressive, but the other problem is, they'll do one thing with one employee. I mean, I know a situation where a lady held hostage two nurses with a syringe, held hostage. I mean, criminal charges should be filed. They found guns in her vehicle on the property. No discipline, back to work the next week. Roughly same week, find a knife on. So one of the officers walked in with a small pocket knife in his pocket. And guess what? We filed criminal charges. So one employee gets away with kidnapping, holding hostage, guns in the vehicle, and gets away with that. And no problem. We like you. You come back to work next week. But we don't like you, and we're going to file charges on you. We're going to fire you. And that's the problem. No consistency. I mean, they may sit in there and cuss for 5 hours, cuss you about saying a cuss word, and fire you when they're sitting there cussing all the time. That's the issues that I have. There is absolutely no consistency, just no reason, rhyme or reason. Walk in, we're mad at you today, or we're mad at you, and we're going to find a reason. And a lot of these, they're targeting them. They're mad at them. They're targeting them, and it seems obvious from the ones that I've dealt with that they had targets on their back. They were going to be fired regardless, and they make up some of the stupidest reasons in the world. And let me ask you this, Eve. When me and Bob first started working, when I got appointed as the chairman of corrections on this corrections committee, Bob had just been appointed OCP president. They had a grievance person, and we worked all the time with that grievance person to avoid going to court. And a lot of times, and they were being fair. I got to say, I thought they were fair. There was cases where they would come in and go, hey, y'all don't know what's going on. Here's the facts. And there would be times that we had to say, hey, we can't defend you. I mean, like, I'll give you one example. One of the officers watched them beat up and may have even participated in having an inmate beat, inmates beat another inmate up. And he come and wanted to defend. Hey, there's no defending that. I mean, we're not going to go in and say we're going to defend somebody who grotesquely, who violated the law. No defending that. But we would go to them and present a case, and quite often we were getting resolution. I mean, they might have to sign a reprimand or something like that, but we were getting resolution before we were ever going to court. And then when they had to go to court, guess what? That made it harder to beat them because they had that proof that, yes, we did do, and a lot of times when they did do, replace the guy, and now the guy does something, or gal, I say gal, employee does something, well, then again, we have less of a stance because now we've used progressive discipline. Don't you think that the Department of Corrections would be wise to put back some grievance department and let those informally be handled and work with OCP to handle those? That would save so much issue in the court system.
Well,
It would save a lot. It save a lot of money. That's for sure, because that's the way it was working before, and it worked good. We win some, we lose some. And first of all, I do want to go back on Mike Osborne. I like Mike Osborne. We've been friends a long time, but I agree with you, JJ. He didn't know as much as he thought he knew, because they left things out of this new system. I don't know. You think maybe it's an accident, but it's on purpose. But not only that, who are we going to get to? Let's just go cut through the chase here. Who are we going to get to investigate him? The Attorney General's not going to do it. Who's going to be next? The governor's not doing it. They don't want it. They want to deny it. Governor? Well, he's not in there yet.
Exactly.
But they could just do what they want to do and violate the law. And they're the law. The prisons, people are put in prison for violating the law, and they are actually violating the law themselves.
Well, Bob, I think that if we'll get a case together, and I think that's what we're doing, I think by bringing this to people's attention, talking about it today, maybe we get more examples. I think Eve is getting a very, very good record of what's going on, documenting. These are cases in the court. We don't have to go say we think. We don't have to say maybe. These are cases that are being documented in court. She's winning, she's turning these in. And hopefully we get a new AG, Attorney General. And I can tell you, one of the Attorney Generals that probably is most likely to win came up to me the other day and said, hey, I've seen the work you've done with DOC. You have my word if I get in there. And that was unsolicited. I didn't ask him. He said, I will work to fix the problem in there that you have shown. And so, again, this is a huge problem. This is a huge, huge problem. And I will tell you, even I don't know if you realize this. I know Bob realizes this. but they were already very, very dangerous on shortage of staff. And I know you had to hear that from your clients. I mean, I know they're sharing with you. But again, we have this very, very critical shortage of staff issues, and they're firing willy-nilly whoever they want, whenever they want, causing more shortages of staff. And then we have more problems because they're holding these staff members. I know this has to be a big problem for your clients. They're holding these staff members responsible for doing about 10 jobs. You know what I'm saying? When the policy says here you're supposed to have 3 people there, there's one, and they go, oh well, we just don't have staff, you're going to have to cover. And then they're going in and firing people like you didn't do a good job because they didn't do the job of 10 people, you know. Or
They firing people, JJ. They're firing people, and they've got the reputation out there now that nobody wants to go to work for them.
Exactly.
They're shorthanded, and what are they doing? They're paying overtime. We're paying goodles, tons of overtime.
Can you figure that? Does that figure into that? You know, I wouldn't think overtime would figure in because if we're saying back pay, if we're saying make them whole, again, do you figure that overtime? Because again, we know they would have got X number of overtime.
So
It was then it was automatically. I mean, now it's automatically you're working 10 hours a day. It's not overtime as such as once in a while. That's just the way it is nowadays. You're working all these hours, and if you don't like it, you can quit.
yeah. So a couple things on that. The case that I'm talking about right now, I'm about to go to court, and I'm sure the administrative law judge is not looking forward to it because nobody has really gotten to the point where we're going to have to settle it in court because it's not outlined in legislation. So clearly we need to make some legislative changes. We need to change the statute. We need to fix some of these problems as we're identifying them. Going back and saying should, coulda, woulda, that doesn't fix anything now. Now we need to fix it. We need to have legislators that will carry some bills to get some things changed correctly, fix some of these issues. But I'll give you an example. The one that I'm going to court on, she was a captain. This person was a captain. Captains are required to work 4 10-hour shifts. So automatically, if she only works for 4 days, that's 40 hours. But they require captains because there is a supervisor on shift, the shift supervisor, however they word that, they have to spend 30 minutes to an hour before their shift and 30 minutes to an hour after their shift, getting on the speed with the previous supervisor and the one after them. So that puts them automatically 4 hours of overtime just to do their job. I saw something the other day, and I'm trying to track it down, but I saw something where employees are saying they're being told they can't even go out of town on the weekends or on their days off or go on vacation because they're being considered on call unofficially, not getting paid for it. My friend that's a nurse, if she's on call, she gets money for being on call because her schedule revolves around her employer. I'm being told that they are being considered on call all the time. And they're saying they don't even have a life. They can't do anything, and they're not getting paid for it. That's another example of them just being understaffed and not taking care of business.
Well, that's a violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act, ain't it? I don't think they can actually do that if we challenge them.
That's what it's going to take. Is we have to stand up to them, and it's a matter of getting the information. Once an employee, go back to the employees that are terminated, they may have proof that helps their case, but the second they're terminated, they don't have access to their email, they don't have access to their fellow employees, they can't always bring it into court. It is all stacked against them in the state's favor.
Well, Eve, I just want to let our listeners know this case. I mean, we're having a long discussion, but we ain't even tipping the iceberg. I mean, we could sit here and talk 3 hours over the issues that we are discussing, and sometimes they don't have that. When the governor lets somebody out in 70 days, boy, that gets a big talk. This kind of, you have to get into the weeds to understand this. So this doesn't have that, big zeal and everybody wants to talk about it, but this is important. And you got a case that you're saying is coming up, And now we're going to decide, what is that back pay? What does it mean to make someone whole? And why that's so key right now, why everybody needs to understand this, and you guys listening with the Department of Corrections watching, why that's important, because every case after this is going to be looking to this case as to what it means to make somebody whole. Does that mean they got to go back in and reinstate your entire retirement, which it should be? Does that mean they had to back pay you? Does that mean that they had to restore all your annual hours that you would have got while you were there? Does that also mean that they had to pay you overtime and all of the issues? I don't guess they get into pain and suffering and all that. It's just real loss, right, Eve?
Well, and so here's some of the odd entities, and this is all going to have to be worked out, and it may not be worked out in one hearing. We may have to have some follow-up briefing. Department of Corrections has put some employee language out there that if you're not employed for more than a year or more than 2 years, you lose certain benefits. Well, that doesn't work here. I'm guessing they're probably going to try to apply it because they've got the language to protect themselves. But the reality is everything's on a stay when you're going through court. So that puts a hold on everything. But I mean, are they actually going to are they going to write them this check? Are we going to put a monetized figure on everything? Are they going to put them back to work? Are they going to offer to let them transfer somewhere else? Are they just assuming this is a settlement, even though the judge ordered them to reinstate the employee?
Well, let me ask you a question. Let's say that I had an investment, say a little account that I set up on my own, and I've got money invested, and now you fire me, and I have to take money out of that account that was drawing interest or was invested, was drawing dividends. Maybe I had gold went up 1,000%. You know what I'm saying? And I lost out on that 1,000% investment because I had to use that money to pay my bills and to go ahead and live on while you screwed me out of my money. Now, are they going to consider, is that a consideration? Because that's real loss. That's real provable loss right there. Is that even in the equation, Eve?
There is no equation. That's the problem. We are going to have to create one. And then if it's not fair to the employee, we're going to have to fight it. And what people need to understand is this isn't just about this one employee. When we talked to the judge the other day, because I filed a motion for, my calculations, and I laid it all out. I took their payroll. I did a whole massive spreadsheet. And some of those things you can say they're measurable, but how do you put a figure on it? How do you put a figure on if they're, if they can't go back to being a state employee? How do you put a figure on how many years do they live that they're lessened their retirement? They should have retired at 20 years. They're retiring at 14 years. That's a measurable figure, but do you apply it for 10 years? Do you apply it for 15? Do you apply it for 30? There's a lot of variances here. And we're talking about the Department of Corrections, but the judge said he talked to Civil Service Division. They don't know of any other examples. So I don't know if other state agencies just have written some checks and not fought it like Department of Corrections. And that's why we're here. But unless I can find something, this is it, which means what we can figure out potentially may be what every other state agency and every state employee looks to until something else is done. So if it's, go ahead.
Well, I want to say this before we get off. I do believe in Justin Ferris. I think he'll try to change it. I hope he will try to change it. I think he will try to make some changes to it. But he's the Department of Corrections, through the work of Director Hart, through the work of the governor, it'll take the Department of Correction 5 years or more to get it going again. They got it so screwed up. We're so short of employees, and it's just so terrible. It's just a terrible place to work now. It wasn't before.
Right.
JJ, I've heard people tell me that their whole family worked there. They love
Oh,
working
Bob,
there.
I know all kinds of families down here, but I'm going to disagree with you, Bob. Every once in a while, me and old Bob had to disagree. Justin Ferris has been in there for second place since under Crow, under Harp, and now he's in the lead. He's been there for a year, and he ain't done a damn thing. He's not done a damn thing since he's been there, and I'll guarantee you he needs to be gone. He doesn't, and as long as he's there, people know he's not done anything to replace. He's not done anything. I want him to prove me wrong. I'd love to be proved wrong, but the record, when you're betting on old horses at the horse track, you don't bet on the loser, and he's got a track record. He's a loser.
Hart's been gone a year already.
Yeah, and what's he done? What's Justin done in a year? And guess what? We're here fighting this case. Justin, if you're listening, if you want to do something in press, I'll come on here and eat crow. If you do something right, and I'll brag on you. You sit down with Dave, you come down and you make it right. You come up with the package when you fire somebody. What y'all done is 100% wrong. Come down here and set 100% right, set the record right, do people right, do justice like you sworn to do, like you should do, and set up something, because guess what? There's going to be a lot of employees, and this is OCP. Y'all want to know what OCP does? This right here is OCP in action. This is taking 2 to 3 years. This is what Justin Ferris has done. They've made this employee wait 2, 3 years, fight like hell to get this done. And now we're having to fight like hell to get a proper ruling. And why? Because every employee, and how many you got, Eve? 30 something, 28? How many you got coming behind this?
Oh, I don't even know.
Yeah. So massive employees, just one attorney here. We're just talking one person. Justin Ferris, you want to do right? Come up here, get this right. Then we'll start bragging about you. Start doing right by your employees. That's who you, number one. You want to recruit people? Start letting people see you do right. Start treating employees right, and the word will get out there. Eve, I'll give you.
Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out whether the governor's behind this, whether he's the one telling them to do this.
That's how he got appointed. Eve, you want to give last word? Me and Bob, we got up on our soapbox. So,
okay, so I'm going to say, I know we've been talking about Oklahoma corrections professionals. Obviously, I represent more than just that. I'm honored to be your general counsel. It has been an amazing experience and ride. But I think you guys have also talked about the problems with Department of Corrections go so far beyond just the employee relationship. I mean, the foundation is so shaky because they're not taking care of their employees. They are so severely understaffed. I have a case that I'm getting ready to file within the next month or two about a murder in one of our prison systems. I know I don't have to tell you guys, but the people may not know. We've got family members that are just reaching out. They haven't talked to their family members that are incarcerated in months. They don't know if they're alive or dead. They can't get a hold of them. They can't get information. You call as a family member and you try to talk to an employee within the prison system, and your loved one gets punished for it sometimes. Now, there's some good people in there, but there's some bad people. And I would love for you to invite me back on. I'm doing a little plug here, but I'd like to talk about some of the other issues that I think are created by the shortage within the employees. I think that prevents them from hiring, the way they should, and they're not taking care of their employees. And there's all sorts of problems. But this family has been extorted. They paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. The more I dig into it, the more I realize it is widespread. And there is no way guards and officials are not involved as well. And so it's a whole other matter. And I would love for you to come back and let me talk about that.
That's a guarantee, Eve. We're going to come back, have that conversation. And again, that's another thing. Ferris, if you're listening, people whose kid is beat up, I get it. You don't want them taking pictures. That's why you don't let them. But family members being denied to see their family when they're on their deathbed because y'all failed to do your job, moving people, hiding them from legislators. Hey, we could go on. We're out of time. I'll guarantee you that Bob's got me up on my soapbox now. He woke me up. He got me riled up. And here's the deal. I want to end on this. Justin, I'm kicking you pretty good in the shins because you deserve to be kicked in the shin. In fact, you deserve to be kicked in your butts where you deserve to be. But here's the deal. I have had, when you took over, I said I had high hopes that you would be different. And right now you haven't been different. I would be proud to say if you did something right, and I'll be proud to say when you do it. But right now, I've been watching a year and I ain't seen nothing. In fact, you're looking just as bad and sometimes worse than Hart. So that's what I want to end on. Hey, we got a great program. Thank you, Eve, for being on here. Bob, that's why I love you, and I love you on here because we can have a difference of opinion and still be great friends. So, guys, I appreciate both of you more than you know. Y'all are great friends, and I appreciate y'all coming on, and we'll pick up this conversation in a week or two. Y'all have a
Thank
blessed
you,
day.
Eve.
Bye.
Thank you.